All right, everyone, welcome, welcome. This is the Branditize Seminar, our webinar series with the ABC, the Atlanta Black Chambers. And if you didn't know, this is the 20th year anniversary of the Chamber. So if you haven't had the chance to join us yet as a member, this is the perfect year to be a member. We're doing a lot of things that are happening. A lot of cool things are in the works for up-leveling for ourselves and for our members, creating a lot of new opportunities. This series, what I'm super excited about today is we all know about the practical uses of tools and technology in our business. We're up on that, we're attending to it, we're learning AI, we're getting better at the workflows. But what we're going to talk about today is a really future forward look of what our businesses could be, and is looking at the possibilities of quantum computing. So I'm super excited about that because this is something that we can build and look at towards the future versus what we're doing right now. So I am going to hand it over to Harold to get started. Harold, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Samay. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. I am excited about having this talk on quantum computing. When I first decided to give this talk, I was a little like, well, are we going to have 3 people show up on it? And I'm happy to see we had a large number of people sign up for this talk. It's a very, like Samay say, a very forward-thinking type of topic. It's not the flavor of the month. It is not something that you hear on the news or everybody's talking about, but it's one of those things that's definitely coming down the pipe. And so I wanted people to kind of share in it and kind of get a taste of what it's going to be like. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen here, and then let me share my screen first. I got a request. I'm not able to share to me. I'll send the request.
All right, you should be good to go.
Okay, yeah, I'm good. Okay, perfect. So let's share here. And then let's go here. All right, can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. All right. So, like I said, we're going to have a good talk on quantum computing. This is going to be a very interesting conversation because of the fact that it's going to cover a lot of different topics. So I'm going to turn my phone off here so I don't get too much interruption from that. Okay. So what we're gonna talk about is we're gonna talk about how quantum computing is gonna be affecting the world. I'm gonna touch on a lot of different topics on industries is gonna be touching along with some of the other topics that are going to be happening with quantum computing. I'm also going to touch on some very complex topics. Now, I tried my best to make it as simple as possible. So when I get into some of those topics, if you don't get it completely, don't worry about it. Quantum computing can be a very complex subject and very hard to kind of wrap your brain around, especially quantum mechanics. But it is a coming industry. It is a coming uh, era of computing, and we definitely have to embrace it. And so I'm glad that you're able to get on the forefront a good 5 to 10 years before it actually has become prevalent in our society. So with that being said, let me get started. Let me go here. Okay, so here's the topics on quantum computing. I'm going to talk a little bit about me and just kind of who I am to let you know that I'm not just some crazy guy, having a conversation about quantum computing. Then we're going to talk. One of the most common questions I got is, why are you having to talk about quantum computing? So I'm going to answer that question on why I'm having to talk about quantum computing so far in advance. And I kind of hope it hit home with some of you. Then we're going to get into quantum computing. I'm going to talk about some of the core terminology and how it basically works on the core level. You may be quantum physicists by the end of this talk. But I'm going to try to simplify it as much as possible, I promise you. Then I'm going to go into how quantum computing is going to be affecting banking. You may not know that banking is on the forefront of the quantum computing industry. They have to be. And I'm going to explain to you why the banking industry started this quantum era, this quantum journey a few years ago, and they are rapidly making changes to their infrastructure to handle this new quantum computing industry that's coming up. Then I'm going to go into quantum computing in healthcare. Anybody in the healthcare industry, anybody go to the doctor, I'm going to anybody who's on prescription medication, you'll get some information on how quantum computing is going to basically change healthcare, or at least I'm going to talk about part of the healthcare is going to change. Then I'm going to talk about my industry, the tech industry, how quantum computing will be changing the tech industry, and all of its impact on that. And then I'm going to wrap it up by talking about how businesses can benefit from quantum computing. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get started. And questions, sorry. And at the end of it, we're going to talk about questions. So let me start off by saying who I am. My name is Harold Alexander. I'm a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. I worked as an engineer for a few years, and then I started my own business called Alexander Software. It's in 2001. And we set up and maintain IT structures for doctor offices. That's why the medical industry is such a interesting point to me, because I'm constantly in doctor offices. I set them up, maintain them, and we also do software development as well for doctors and non-doctors. So first question: why are we having a talk about quantum computing? The Black businesses have been late to adopting some technology. And I'm going to talk about one technology that a lot of Black businesses was late to the game with, and that is called smartphone apps. Now, this late adoption to smartphone apps has cost Black businesses billions in lost revenue. And I'm going to go through why, how that revenue lost. And I'm going to give you an approximate timeline. But before I go through all of that, let me take you a trip down memory lane. Now, in 2007, Steve Jobs, on stage at the Macworld Conference, talked about this new revolutionary item. It was called the iPhone. He was telling how it was going to change everything and how people are going to be using it and all these apps and everything. No, people kind of was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it basically changed everything that we have about computing. So this iPhone basically combined the phone, the iPod, and internet all in one device. And it basically revolutionized the smartphone industry and the computer industry as a whole. It initially came on, the initial app, the initial iPhone came out, it only supported web-based apps. A lot of people didn't realize that when the first iPhone came out, only web-based apps were allowed on it. Then it went to at the App Store came out in 2008, which was a year later. That's when apps were able to be developed on the iPhone. I just wanted to, and I wanted to give a little bit of tidbit of information about Did you know? Did you know that Apple actually didn't own the term iPhone? That it was actually owned by Cisco. So Cisco had the iPhone, and it was trademarked by Cisco back in 2000, about the year 2000. And they used to use it for their voice over IP phone, which was heavy in business. It wasn't really that big in outside of the business world, but businesses use the iPhone. The iPhone a lot for on desktops. When Apple announced the iPhone in January of 2007, Cisco immediately filed a lawsuit against them a day later, and they ended up settling in court. And what basically happened, like literally the next month, and what happened was the courts had decided that they settled, and they said that they both can use the name iPhone. What happened was Cisco ended up eventually changing to the IP phone, and then so that's how Apple got the term iPhone into existence. So just a little bit of information. I didn't want to leave that part out. I thought that would be something that I don't know how known that was, but yeah, Apple didn't own the term iPhone. They actually got it from Cisco. So going back to the app development in 2008, 2010, mobile app ecosystem started to emerge after the App Store came out and Google Play Store. Most businesses, including Black-owned businesses, were just starting to explore this new presence of mobile presence. They were mostly focusing on their website and social media, because Facebook had just come out and all these other social media apps started to come out, but they weren't focusing on apps for a smartphone. They were mostly focusing on just websites and other things. What they did not know is that, and this is why, the training and education is so important, is that the first iPhone, you could have wrapped your website into an app and put it on the first smartphone. Can you imagine if you had your business or your website on the very first iPhones that came out, how many people were looking for certain products? You would have definitely been doing a lot more revenue if that was the case. So fast forward 2013, 2015, smartphone stores started to adopt. Adoption started to soar. More businesses started getting in. However, Black businesses still lagged in adoption of and due to resources and education. And it was because the businesses did not know that, hey, I could just take my current website, wrap it up, and maybe a few hundred, maybe close to less than $1,000, have it on the new smartphone. That would have been crazy. But a lot of Black businesses and businesses in general didn't know that, so they did not use this, and it was a lack of revenue that was completely lost. So 2018, 2020, increased awareness of mobile applications started happening. Customer engagement grew, even with Black businesses, but the percentage of Black businesses still lagged with adoption from normal Black businesses. So the percentage, even though it increased, it wasn't that high. As a matter of fact, as of today, only 16% of Black businesses have mobile-facing apps, as opposed to non-Black businesses as 42% of mobile-facing apps. So I know you're saying, wait, I came on a call to talk about quantum computer. Why did you do talking about apps? Well, I'm gonna wrap it up. So how did this affect the late adoption of revenue for Black businesses? So let me tell you that a revenue boost from apps came, and studies have shown that 10 to 20% boost in revenue from businesses who have app, and it came from local customer engagement, loyalty, operational, things like that. So there's a 10 to 30% boost in revenue for just having an app on the App Store. The number of Black businesses in America right now is roughly about 140,000 in the US. So if you just crunch some simple numbers, you'll see that, like, let's say 16% have apps, which means that 84% don't. So if you use that 84% number and you say that 84% of these businesses are missing out on 10% annually in revenue growth because they don't have apps on their phone, have apps to their customers. And if the average Black business make around $100,000 a year, that if you again, crunch the numbers, you got $1.1 billion over 5 years, which is a lost revenue of $5.8 billion of potential lost revenue. All of this because there was a late adoption to apps, and the late adoption came from the lack of awareness of Black businesses of adopting this new technology that changed the industry. So, and this is just based on up to 2020, where smartphone adoptions were only 77% in 2018, and it jumped up to 81% in 2019. It eventually had gotten to over 90%. I think we're not at 100 yet, but we're in the 90% of adoptions. So that is showing that's showing the large number of potential revenue loss. So circling back, why am I having this talk about quantum computing? Well, we can't afford not to have this talk. We lost almost $6 billion of potential revenue by not cutting to the smartphone game late, getting to the smartphone game late. Let's not make this same mistake with quantum computing, because quantum computing is going to be even more of a significant change in the computer industry than smartphones are. So this is going to revolutionize a lot of stuff in the industry. There's a lot of potential to make more money. And I think that number of 10 to 30% is going to be modest when it comes to quantum computing. It's going to be a lot higher. So I think we should continue this race on to this quantum computing and get as much knowledge as we possibly can and reduce the potential loss of revenue that businesses have lost in the smartphone and app industry. So that was my wrap up on why I'm having this talk, because I want to get the revenue up to in businesses where we won't be late to the game. So you're on this talk, you won't be late. And I'm going to give you some great ideas on how you can also use these different quantum computing apps and other techniques in order to do in your business. So Before I get into quantum computing, which is what I'm going to do next, I'm going to have to apologize to you. This is my first time ever apologizing on a talk, but I want to apologize because I'm going to talk about two topics, and they're very complex topics. And I went back and forth on whether I should even include these topics in my talk, but I would be doing you a disservice if I did not include these topics. They are basically the fundamentals of quantum computing, and they're super complex. But like I said, I'm gonna give you some analogies and some simplified uh, examples on how you can understand this better. But apologize up front, and I hope you can get something out of it. So the first thing I'm gonna talk about is a thing called superposition. It's what quantum computing is kind of built on. And the other conversation we're going to talk about is entanglement. These are two um, topics that basically are fundamental parts of quantum computing. There are others, but these are the two main ones that I want to kind of go over with you, and so you'll understand. So this is going to get a little complicated, so just kind of bear with me for the next few minutes. I'm going to try to simplify it, and then if you have any questions at the end, definitely ask. So, what is a quantum computing? So, a quantum computer is a computer that harnesses the power of quantum mechanics to solve complex problems faster than regular computers. Now, just to kind of give you the backstory, regular computers uses ones and zeros as their current position. So right now, as you're on this Zoom talk, if you use Word, if you use Excel, if you use PowerPoint, if you use anything on your computer, all of that's done with ones and zeros. It can't do anything else. It uses a one or a zero. It can't be both. It has to be either or in the current computer. And it uses these ones and zero combination to generate everything on the computer, right? Quantum computer uses a thing called a qubit, and a qubit can be both one and zero at the exact same time. Now, this is called, because regular bit, their position can be either position of one or position of zero. Because a qubit can be both one and zero, instead of it being just a position, they call it a superposition because it can take on two states at the same time. This is just the principle, the physics of quantums. It can, because qubits can take on these two positions at the same time. It gets even more interesting. So when you measure this bit, or this qubit, it collapses, and it collapses into that one or zero state, which is what traditional computers use. So first, a qubit has both positions, and then when you measure it, and measuring it is just basically you observing it or a way of interacting with it. That's what measuring means. And I'm gonna use the term measure a couple of times, so I just want to make sure you understand what it means. Measure means that you're interacting with the qubit or you're observing it. It collapses the qubit, and it becomes a one or a zero state. It first is in superposition, which is both one and zero, and then it switches to one or zero. So I'm going to give you an example that may bring it home for you. Let's use a spinning coin. So going back, the regular bit on the computer you're on now, what you're watching me on now, is communicating back and forth with ones and zeros. So we're going to use the coin analogy, and let's say the heads of a coin is zero and the tail of a coin is one. So sitting on the table, it has one position. It can either be heads or tails. It can't be both because it's just lying there, right? You can flip it over, but it has to take on one particular position. The qubit will take on both position if you flip it in the air. Now, assume that you're taking this coin and you're flipping it. As it's spinning in the air, it doesn't have either position. It's spinning on both heads and tails. So it has a superposition. Until you catch it or measure it, it doesn't take on heads or tails, but you can use a probability that can determine which one is going to land on, but you don't know. As it's spinning in the air, you have no idea what it's going to land on. But that is what superpositioning is. So superpositioning is a qubit that has both one and zero state at the exact same time, and you can use the flipping coin as an example of how it would make more sense. So if you hear qubit and you hear superposition, think of a coin spinning in the air, and that it doesn't have either heads or tails, and it doesn't take on a position until it lands. So that's what superposition is. So now, I'm gonna go into entanglement. Entanglement is a little bit more complex because if you use the same thing as qubits are, like I said, can have a superposition of both one and zero, But if you take two qubits that are linked together, if you whatever happens to one affects the other. So let me give you an example of, let's say we have two qubits that are entangled, and one is always going to be the opposite of the other, right? So what you'll see is that you're going to have a qubit A, which would be 0, and qubit B, which would be always 1, because it's always going to be the opposite. So you're going to have two qubits. One's going to be 0, one's going to be 1. And if you change qubit A, if qubit A is 1, then qubit B is always going to be 0. Now, this is when you before you measure it, because before you measure it, it's going to be in the superposition part of it, which means that it's going to be spinning on both. Think of the flipping coin that's spinning, and then when you measure it or when you interact with it, it chooses one or the other. So let me show you a little example here of what I'm talking about. So you'll see this little animation here of the qubit. You'll see that qubit A you'll see it when it flips over, it has 0 and 1, and then it flips to 0. Well, what happens is that if you interact with A, not B, just leave B alone. If you interact with A and you measure A flips to 0 without you even touching B, it automatically changes to 1. So that's what entanglement is. These two bits are linked, and it doesn't matter how far they are. They could be on the other side of the planet. But when you touch A, and it becomes a position, it chooses a position of 1 or 0, then it also affects B. That's entanglement. So a good example would be, have you ever heard of where they're twins? Read this study one time that babies who are born at the same time, sometimes can have feelings that the other twin would feel. So for an example, if one twin hurts that twin's arm, the other twin would feel that arm being hurt. If one twin gets a shot, the other twin feels pain where the shot was done. There's been studies that have shown that twins are connected in a particular way where that happens. Well, that's the same thing as entanglement. So when you affect one, the other one is also affected instantly, no matter where they are on the planet. They don't have to be close together. They don't have to be far apart. So when you think of entanglement, think of the twin scenario where one twin, breaks an arm, the other twin feels that arm broken, things like that. So that's entanglement. And that's the end of the complicated part of this talk. So I hope you get it. If you don't worry about it. It is one of those topics that is, people go to school for a very long time to study these two particular topics. And it is one of those things that, just kind of is complicated and very hard to simplify. So, but that's basically, so I want to show you, this is what a quantum computer looks like. If you've never seen one, this is what it looks like. If you are thinking, why is it hanging from the ceiling? You're absolutely right. It is hanging from the ceiling, but there is a reason why they have this hanging from a ceiling. This is just one. This is Google's AI quantum computing. The reason why it's hanging from why it's hanging from a ceiling is because they have to be at extremely cold temperatures. Qubits only work at absolute 0. Now, absolute 0 is not 0. Absolute 0 is actually 459.67 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the temperature where all matter stops moving. It is a physics term. You don't have to worry about it, but at 459.67 degrees, all matter, including atoms, stop moving. Nothing moves at that temperature. And so they have to have the qubits at a fraction above that particular temperature. Just to give you a scenario, outer space, the current temperature of outer space is 454 degrees Fahrenheit, 454.8 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, so this machine you're looking at is colder than outer space, just so you'll kind of get a general idea. So to achieve this cold temperature, what they do is they hang it on the ceiling, and what they do is they use a dilution refrigerator. So they put the refrigeration at the very top of this refrigeration unit, and the cold air falls down, because cold air works better from the top all the way down. If you notice buildings that they have built, skyscrapers, any building that has, 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 floors, they put the refrigeration on the top of the building so that it can flow down and cool everything. Put it on the bottom and it going up is not efficient. But if you put it on the top, you cool the entire thing. That's why it's hanging from a ceiling and not on the floor, because it has to be at super cool temperature pictures, and it looks like a fancy chandelier that you could put in somebody's house, but it actually is a very expensive quantum computing. And those little wires and cables in there are where they're handling the qubit. So just wanted to show you what the qubit looks like, quantum computer looks like. Now there are about 150 roughly quantum computing globally right now. That number has increased a lot over the last few years. There were like 7 or 8 quite a few years ago. Now it's close to 150. Here's some of the companies that have quantum computing: IBM, Google has one, Google has a couple, and they're building more. Intel, Microsoft, Amazon is outsourcing their quantum computing, but they're probably going to have one of their own very shortly. Now I'm going to go into how it's going to be affecting banking. So banking is going to be, like I said earlier, banking is on the forefront of quantum computing industry. They're doing it quietly. There's not a lot of noise about it, but they're doing it. And what they're doing is because banks transact a huge amount of transactions, right? So they are trying to detect suspicious activity, which quantum computers are great at. They're also doing insider trading, trying to block insider trading, money laundering, and quantum computing is very good at detecting hidden patterns, more effective than classical AI computers are right now. So they're going to make AI computers look like the etch and sketch. It's going to be very, very antiquated when quantum computers come in. So as we're learning and getting all into this AI thing, quantum computing and AI is going to just radically change a lot that we're going to be doing with AI and quantum computing and AI. Another thing they're going to be doing is cybersecurity. Remember, quantum computing, banks are preparing for the future of quantum computing because quantum computing can break every single encryption on the planet as of today. So every single encryption that's out there today, quantum computer will eventually be able to break. So banks doesn't have the luxury of waiting around till they come. They have to hop on this right now. So what they're doing is that they're testing what they call a quantum resistant algorithm or a quantum resistant encryption. Basically, when you go to the bank or if you use Cash App or you do anything with money and you're transmitting money, all of that money is transmitted with an encryption. Right now, that money that's being transferred with encryption can be broken with a quantum computer. They're trying to come up with algorithms that will be quantum computer resistant. Basically, quantum computers will not be able to break that algorithm. And they're exploring this quantum key distribution, which is a secure communication. And just an example, just a couple of banks, HSBC and Barclays, are part of a post-quantum cryptography pilot program that they're doing right now, which they are trying to focus on. So encryption in banks used today. So here's one of the things I wanted to kind of show you. This is very interesting. So right now, banks, all of your banks that you deal with, they use an encryption technology called RSA-248, which is or an encryptive curve in cryptography. This is what they use to secure data, transactions, communication. These are some of the strongest encryptions in the industry right now. Just so happened they're so strong that a classical computer with brute force would take 1 billion years to crack it. It would take over like a few billion years in order to crack these. With the fastest supercomputer on the planet right now, if they try to break into one of these supercomputers, encryption, one of these bank encryption, the classical computer would take 1 billion years to do it. And so it makes it not, practical today to use because it's a huge amount of possible keys that you really can't, it makes it irrelevant to use a computer because there's too many keys for it to go through. And that's why it takes 1 billion years to go through it. However, quantum computing using their algorithm can break that same encryption in a matter of hours. Now you're talking about 1 billion years. You're talking about the fastest computer on the planet today taking 1 billion years, and a quantum computer doing it in hours or less. They set up maybe about a day, but at least hours or less. It goes back to that what I told you earlier about the superpositioning and that entanglement. Because of that technology, because you can have a bit, you have one bit and it interacts and it changes to the other bit, you can use that as a catalyst to break these high level encryption that banks are using. That's why banks are going crazy, and they are not going to wait for it. As a matter of fact, they're saying that an estimate 4,000 qubits would be needed in order to break the encryption for the day in a few hours. Just to kind of give you a little backstory, IBM's Condor, they've been working on that for a while now. They're up to 1,100 qubits, a little over 1,100 qubits so far created. They have the most qubits of any CPUs or QPUs right now. But they're rapidly changing. So you'll see once they hit that sweet spot of 4,000 qubits, those computers will be able to break those algorithms in a matter of hours. So again, this is why banks cannot wait on it. That's why they're creating these quantum safe cryptography that are being developed urgently, and the government is also involved in a lot of that as well. I want to. This is a great article on quantum computing and banking. If you want to find out more information about it, you can go to the Banker, and basically what it's saying is, and I only got little bit of it, is as the promise of quantum computer edges closer to becoming a reality, banks around the world are not taking any chances. This new technology can crack currently any encryption standards within the next half decade, threatening lenders, financial institutions, and reshaping basically our financial landscape. So it's basically saying that, hey, we can't wait for this technology to come on. We've got to handle it right here, right now. And they have this thing called a Q day, which is the quantum day, where they feel like quantum technology will be sufficient enough to where it will break every single algorithm on the planet. So banks are starting to get ready on it. In this article, it talks about also how the government is also doing it. If your bank is on this list, take a look at it. I put a list of some of the banks that are doing some stuff. Every bank is really doing something, but I just put a list of some of the banks that are starting to explore quantum and what they're doing with quantum. JP Morgan Chase, one of the world's largest banks, are taking this very, very seriously, and they've invested a lot of money and a lot of time into quantum R&D. Bank of America, Citigroup, actually working on quantum computerware. Wells Fargo is they haven't said that much publicly, but there's talk that they're doing a lot in the back end. They have to, and so is U.S. Bank. They haven't really publicly acknowledged something, but banks have already moved forward with it. They've been starting on this a few years now, and they're going to be rapidly moving into protecting their infrastructure from banks, and Bitcoin as well is also is going to be a threat to it as well. So let's go into healthcare. My industry, the industry I love, drug discovery. Anybody in here take prescription drugs? Currently, drugs the simulation can be extremely complex and time consuming. Quantum computers can model molecular and chemical reactions at an atomic level, something that can speed up the drug recovery, the new drug discovery. A company like Roche and Cleveland Clinic, they're using quantum computer already in drug discovery and research. They're partnering with IBM, who has the Condor quantum computer, and Qubit Pharmaceuticals, who are also into the qubit development of drugs, are trying to get into that to help you go along. This is an interesting stat. So the timeline for drug discovery. So as of right now, if you're taking any medication, that medication on average took between 10 to 15 years to create by the drug company, whether it's pharma, whether it's a Pfizer, whether it's Merck, whether any one of these companies, the average time frame for drug discovery is about 10 to 15 years. The cost of these drugs per drug is between $1 and $2 billion, maybe a little bit more. And the reason why it's taking so long, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, is simulating complex molecules, running through thousands of lab tests, clinical trials. I'm pretty sure we all heard of that. Filtered to millions of potential compounds. This is a very long, very complex process, and it has to be, because people are taking this to keep them alive in some cases, keep them healthy, and they have to be right on it, even though sometimes they're not. But they have to be as close to right as possible. So it is very important for them to get this corrected. So they have to go through a lot of different trial and errors, and they spend a lot of money in order to get a drug to market. 10 to 15 years for the traditional timeline. Quantum computing timeline, 2 to 5 years for a drug to be built, to be done. This is from beginning to end, a significant reduction in drug discovery, 2 to 5 years as opposed to 10 to 15 years with a quantum computer drug discovery. This is why they're trying to use this, because it's going to cut it in like what, a third, a quarter of it in some cases. So that is a huge, huge reducing and time, which means that they'll be able to come up with drugs faster. People will be able to live longer. Drugs should, in theory, I'm putting in theory, go down in cost because the length of time is going to take to do it. And why is it going to be faster? Quantum computers can simulate molecule interactions at a quantum level faster, something classical computers today is what the classical computers can't do really sufficiently. And there's a need to, they can skip certain steps where physical labs can experiment by testing virtual compounds virtually, which is extremely difficult to do, if not impossible, with current computers. And they can handle combinatorial explosions with possible drug formulas to make it better. So that's why quantum computing can do all of these things so much faster, and it can virtually test drugs in a way that classical computers can't, because when most people will take more than one type of drug, they need to make sure that it doesn't interact, it doesn't conflict with the other drug. That takes time. Quantum computers can simulate that in a more realistic way. Quantum computing and technology. Cybersecurity, quantum computing is going to be able to break, like I was saying early, almost all encryption, RSA and ECC encryption. Tech companies are already adopting quantum safe encryption. They're trying to get it now. Google, Chrome, Cloudflare, Microsoft, they're all testing new security protocols. Security protocols are not in place as of yet. They're still testing these things to make sure they actually work. The entire internet security protocol needs to be upgraded. So look at that particular statement. Then all of the protocols almost all the protocols you use on the internet, every single one of them has to be changed because of this new technology. VPN is ubiquitous when it comes to companies, corporations that connect back and forth. I'm pretty sure people on this call have used VPNs before. Blockchain, everybody think blockchain is super, super safe. Quantum computing will be able to break that. All of this stuff will need to be upgraded for quantum computing to be able to take effect. So they're going to basically change a lot of protocols on the internet. So there's going to be a huge change coming. It's not like, oh, well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. It's one of those where it has to change because it will be no use for it. Hardware infrastructure. I showed you that chandelier, that cooling system, that cryogenic cooling system that was hanging from the ceiling that needs to be absolute zero. And so they're going to have somebody build all of those. Those things have to be set in data centers where you all connect to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. They're going to have to be sitting in these data centers, and then that's going to be one of the things that's going to be needed. Quantum computer chips are going to need to be done. There's going to be this whole pipeline that's quantum computer chips that will need to be created. So that is also going to be something that's done. So here's the interesting part: business ideas. So you want to get into the quantum computer era, but you don't know. Here's a business idea. I came up with 5 that I think would probably be pretty good ones. One is called a quantum safe encryption company. Now, what this company would backtracking, quantum computers would eventually break every encryption on the planet. That's basically what that first line says. That means that government, banks, hospitals, big tech firm, they're going to all need quantum resistant solutions. All of them, every company is going to need some type of quantum resistant solution. This is not one of those optional things. It's almost like running a business now or a hospital now or something without a computer. It's really not an option. They've got to do that. So a quantum safe encryption company would be a great company to start right now. Now, you need people who knows quantum, you need people who knows encryption. And I may do a talk on encryption in the later part of this year. I'll reach out to Melvin and Tomei and see if that's something of interest to people who want to know more about encryption. But this level of this type of company would be a great company to start, but you'll need an encryption and cryptography in order to do that. Another one is a quantum consulting firm. Not many people know about quantum computing. You, as of right now, because you've heard the term superposition and entanglement, because you know what you've heard those terms, even if you don't exactly know what it means, you know 99.9% of the people who are on the planet right now, because most people have never even heard of those two terms. But you can start a consulting firm now that you know those two terms. Well, you need a little more than that, but you can go to banks, you can go to government, you can explain to them, hey, how's your quantum strategy? The vast majority of banks are going to look at you side eye like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But you can now start a consulting firm. Again, going back to that app idea, the reason why I showed you that app idea, getting up front, starting early, will you lose out on so much when you start late. Start early, build it up. A lot of people aren't going to be, grasping this, but a consulting firm right now will help people become more aware. And also education. You can have an education certification. As of right now, I don't know if there's any quantum computer certification. There probably is. I don't know of any. I didn't look it up, but you could become certified and offer quantum certifications, which, if there is some, is not very much. And you can have your online quantum computing education company. Again, there's a lot of study, a lot of learning. You're going to need some quantum people on your staff, but it will be something that's going to be, again, needed as you're going back to the banking idea. That's kind of what it is. And the material design and simulation. This one actually is a really cool concept. This is a business idea that I think would work pretty well, because you would be able to create a virtualization, a quantum virtualization. There's already computers now that do virtualization, but there's none that really do on a marketing scale. Quantum virtualization. And what quantum virtualization means is that, let's use the one I got at the very top, the advanced battery. Right now, EVs are very popular. The longest range, I think, is somewhere around 400. I think they're getting maybe to 500 miles, but I think it's between 300 and 400 mile range for a lot of the EVs. The reason why the ranges are so short is because the testing process and the material, everything is so it takes a while and it's very tedious. So what you could do is that you could create a quantum simulation, and what that simulation will do is it will create a battery virtually, and then it will simulate hot, cold, bumpy roads, driving fast, driving slow. It can simulate all these different scenarios, and with very, very good accuracy, determine what is the outcome is going to be and how long it's going to last, which current computers can do, but never on the scale, not on the scale as it does with quantum computing. And the last one is the one that I think I like the best, is this quantum identity verification service. This is a service where you can you basically are verifying login. So everything has a login. You logged in to get into this Zoom call. You log into your bank. You probably log into work. All of those logins will be susceptible to being hacked for quantum computing. A verification service will sit right there at the login process, and it will detect whether it's a quantum break or if it's actually a legitimate person logging in. It'll be great for fintech, healthcare, government. Most the federal governments are already kind of on top of it. So when I say governments and some of these, I'm more talking about local and state governments. But they definitely will need some kind of help coming in the future. And so it will be something that will be really, really helpful for them. So that's it. I'm done. I hope you guys got something out of this quantum talk. I know I spoke a lot. I know I said a lot. And again, I don't want people to think that that you need to be a quantum physicist at this point. But if you grasp even just a little bit of it, and you got any ideas, you can move forward. And there's my LinkedIn. You can reach out if you have any more questions. You can email me, and I will stop now and answer any questions.
No, it was great. And one thing that I saw consistently was your analogies were on point. Your analogies helped to communicate that. So that was really, really perfect. Are there any questions? Do you guys have any questions?
Hi,
Yes.
this is Kimberly. I had one. When we talked about entanglement, there was one screen that you had that shared something about entanglement that I missed. Can you just share that screen?
Sure. Hold on. Let me. Uh, did I end my share? I think I ended my share. Hold on. Let me go back to my share. Here. Let me go back to entanglement. That was up here. Entanglement was this.
Right. I think it's right before
Right
that.
there. Okay.
The one right before.
Oh, this one. Okay. This was superpositioning.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, now I remember. Okay. So that's all I really needed because I of course trying to grasp it all.
Yeah.
And and so now I'm ready to start my company on quantum computing. And so
Go
but thank
for
you
it.
so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome. And please don't be intimidated by this. I mean, when the first computers came out, people were intimidated and it happened. But I mean, you can do this. The quantum, even though it's complex, there are tons of study material. I think IBM has a portal where you can go to and play around with quantum computing. I didn't have the link, but if you just go to it, you have to sign up for it. You can play around with quantum computing right now if you wanted to.
Oh, okay, I can do that. And
Link.
one more thing, I see everybody else has hands, but I just wanted that comparison. My company now is data privacy.
Okay.
And so I was trying to kind of leap to quantum computing if I could. And so I'll try to contact you later just to talk about it in more detail.
Okay, yeah, definitely reach out.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right.
Asia, what about you?
Yes, thank you, Harold, for this valuable information you shared. My question is related to blockchain and cryptography. Could you speak a little more about how you see quantum computing integrating with blockchain, considering, like you said, is a threat to it essentially as it is now, especially considering how people look at blockchain as protected and unhackable?
Yes, yes, great question. Yeah, so I mean, everybody knows that there's a cryptography encryption that's done on blockchain. I don't remember the encryption protocol that blockchain uses. I know it's really high. It's up there with the banks where it takes billions of years to crack with a traditional computer. Um, the blockchain industry, because it's basically open source, they're going to have to make some level of changes to the encryption protocol. I think that's still kind of in the process. So that's something that if somebody wanted to get involved with, they can get involved with it now. This will be a perfect time to look into quantum enable encryption for Bitcoin and for blockchain. I don't know all the details of what they're doing with it, but I know that they're making some modifications to blockchain in order to help hack from hacking. Because right now, the key blockchain, of course, is the underlying technology for Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin, the way it's pretty much a digital ledger for Bitcoin. So the beauty of Bitcoin is that it's untraceable, right? That's what people kind of use Bitcoin as being their whole thing. With the invention of quantum computing, that becomes traceable. And so what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to change their security protocol. I don't know if you remember, I was talking about Microsoft and some of these other tech companies. They're coming up with security protocols. Bitcoin and blockchain will have to come up with their own protocol as well in order to get it. And that will be, they don't, I don't, as of right now, I don't know of anything that they have, but this will be a great time for you to get involved with that and help that protocol be created.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Hey,
And
Harold, this is Glenise. Thank you so much for the information. I am definitely not technical, so this was great to kind of get some knowledge about this topic. My question is, what are quantum computer chips made out of?
That is an excellent question. I need to find out. They use qubits, and because the qubits are at super cold temperature, they have to have a material that handles that type of temperature. I don't know the actual material. I'm sorry, what it's made out
Mhm.
of. I could definitely look that up, and then you could reach out to me, and I can kind of give you a better idea of understanding of what it is. But I don't know exactly the answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, thank you for that. We'll reach out because I'm thinking maybe that's something good to invest in, whatever the material is, invest in it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you know what? And that brings up a good point because the supply chain for quantum computing is basically non-existent. If you want to be a part of that supply chain, meaning that you want to, I show you that cooling system, right? Being a company that makes those cooling systems, being a part of a company that makes the refrigeration. So the absolute zero thing is super fascinating. If you ever want to look at absolute zero, I didn't really know that much about until I started doing this research on quantum computing. But because it's such a cold temperature, it reduces. I mean, nothing moves, and not even atoms move at such a cold temperature. Look up absolute zero. You'll see. But there's not that many that does it on the computer line. There's cryogenic places. You have your eggs frozen and all those different type of things. That's being used, but on the computer area, it's not. I don't think it's used that frequently. So there's a bunch of different areas people can get into in order to for this new quantum era. So
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Perfect. Avel.
Yes, thank you so much. I just had a quick question. First of all, thank you so much for providing this information for us. I was trying to just kind of get some parallels. I know there's such an increase as far as the building of data centers and how they rely on those on cooling systems as well. And so I was just wondering, is there a parallel for a person who's looking to maybe invest in that aspect of it? I know DPR construction and Turner constructions are real big players as far as the building of data centers. Do you see that as maybe some other, those being two main players, as well as the quantum computing as well? Or do you see some other companies that you would suggest that may be good investment opportunities?
I try to I try to shy away from investment just because I don't like to deal with a lot of people money. But I would probably say that I haven't heard of those companies, but I would probably go with the safe option and looking into go into Google and seeing who Google uses for their for who created their dilution refrigeration. It's called dilution refrigeration if you want to kind of look it up. I'm not sure how many companies make that, but I would definitely go into that era of looking at it. I would also look into construction companies because as I showed you, the quantum computer has to be hung from the ceiling, and one of the reasons why outside of the cooling is because of vibration, right? So one of the things that they have to hang on the ceiling is because not only are qubits susceptible to cold, I mean they have to stay in super cold temperature. The room can't vibrate. So there is that context of it as well. So I would look into construction companies that are focusing on refrigeration that does good in refrigeration, that does good in vibration. I know music. They put these pads on the walls so that the vibration can't, go through. But there are other avenues to where you can use vibration. I would look in. I don't want to give you any particular companies because I just try to stay away from giving investment. But I would probably definitely reach out to Google, look on Google, look at their AI, their quantum AI, see what materials are being used to build with that, and then use that information to find out what companies are building that, and then maybe invest in that. Go like backtrack, start with the actual quantum computer, break it down into what it is. You kind of know one of them, the dilution refrigeration, look at the other parts of it, and then backtrack and see what companies are building it, and then start looking at those particular companies.
Beautiful. And what question do you have, Dave?
Two quick questions. One, obviously, this is a great talk, by the way. I absolutely loving all of this. When do you think that this computer system will be affecting the average person? Because obviously, this is super high end. And two, do you think this is going to totally disrupt and destroy the crypto market?
I'm gonna answer your when will it be available for the average person? That's an excellent question. I actually don't know. So the United States government, the Army uses encryption to communicate to their soldiers and everything in the field. They have one of the highest level of encryption up there with banks. They have this thing called Q Day, and you can kind of look up this Q Day, this quantum day thing by the government. And they're using that as a way to where they need to be 100% ready. All of the encryption, what the Air Force One uses to communicate back to the Pentagon, all of that can be hacked now. So they have we have to get this stuff together. So they have a date in mind to where they need to be ready. Once they're ready, I'd probably add another maybe 5 to 10 years on top of that before it start to become consumer ready. The process is starting to rapidly increase to the point to where these qubits, and I showed you the one where IBM had those 1100 qubits on their QPU. So I'd probably say that add on another 5 to 10 years from the Q day, and that probably is a good day for where it's going to be available somewhat to the public. There's links now you can go and play around with IBM and Microsoft's quantum computer. If you Google quantum computer and Microsoft, you'll find links to that. As far as with the crypto industry, I don't necessarily think it's going to disrupt it anymore. I think it's going to decimate banks. I think banks will be around. I think crypto will be around. I think they're going to adapt. I think they'll make protocols that are quantum safe. They're going to build protocol, and there's a need for people to make these protocols. If you know anybody who's trying to get into the industry, I hear people come up to me all the time and say, I want to get into computer industry. I want to get into cybersecurity. Have them start looking into quantum. Quantum technology is super high. I don't even know how many colleges are actually offering a quantum course, but have them look into that. But to answer your question, I do not think it's going to decimate it. I think they'll adapt to it, and they'll just make quantum safe protocols that aren't hackable by quantum.
Love it. Yvonne, what is your question?
I came in a little late, but Harold, you mentioned something about an app or something that there was something I'm missing. Also, I'll let you answer the question.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. You said I mentioned something about are you talking about the apps? When I was talking about apps earlier, I was giving an example of why Black businesses were late to the game with apps and how it affected them revenue wise. So basically, I was giving an example that when apps came out, not enough Black businesses or small businesses in general got onto the app ecosystem. And because of that late adoption of apps, it caused almost $6 billion of lost revenue. And I was giving this talk because quantum computing is still so far in the future to where if you need it, if this is a great time to start looking into it, thinking about it, and moving towards that, so that if you won't lose that loss of revenue. So that's why I was talking about apps.
Okay, great. Also, I just want to mention my background is cybersecurity, and of course, I follow many different entities. And one thing I am following is Trump. He's heavily into this, and I tell you, the things that he have in store is mind blowing. So follow him.
I didn't hear the name. Who did you say you follow? Who?
I'm sorry, I just call him Trump, but
okay. No, I didn't hear who you said. I'm sorry.
No worries, but I'm just saying it's kind of scary, but yeah, and a lot of investments going on according to him involved in this. So just a cybersecurity tip, that's all. But this is awesome. I spoke with you at the Capitol a few months ago about this, and thank you for offering this opportunity. And if you have the slides, if you're gonna willing to share your slides, yeah. That's awesome.
I'll definitely share the slides. Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. And Johnny, what about you?
Thank you. I'm Johnny from South Africa. I run a nonprofit organization that deals with the robotics for young kids in schools and orphanage homes. And then I just want to find out, because to get an early adoption in terms of business, I'm interested in banking, offering consulting. Now, where do I start in terms of quantum computing? And then the other portion is for young people, because then I'll be having access to teach them quantum computing from scratch as early as possible in different schools and in different orphanage homes and underprivileged homes.
So your first question was, you want to get in consulting, and how do you get into consulting with quantum computing? Is that what you're?
Yes, in
Okay.
terms of business, and then focusing on banks.
Okay. The first thing you probably want to do is go online. I should have looked at some courses to see if there's any being offered. I would probably look at getting some quantum computing courses first. I would just read up on it. You took the first step by coming to this talk. The next step would be going to playing around with it, getting more familiar with it, and then taking some watch some videos on YouTube would be a really good step. And also playing around with it, going to IBM's website for their quantum computer, Condor, I think is the name of it. And then also Microsoft has a quantum computing application that you can go in and just play around with it. Just get kind of familiar with it. You're going to have to start dealing with it first before you will able to start to explain it. And then once you have gotten comfortable with it and taken some courses and watching enough videos, you should be proficient enough to where you should be able to start having some intelligent conversations about it. Also, you may want to look into some of these companies may offer their own slideshow. They may offer their own demo of their quantum computing, meaning that you actually will see it in real time, and kind of let you play around with it. So follow them, sign up for their newsletter, make sure they're good to, make sure you're good to go on that aspect. Watch a bunch of videos, see if there's any educational classes that you can take, and just kind of just stay in the loop with it. As far as with children, that is probably kind of the same direction. I would probably say just make sure that you're going to have to teach them on another level, because they're not trying to build a business out of it. They're just trying to learn what it is. So you're going to have to get astute. You're going to have to basically. I heard this great analogy to where how when you're in an airplane and they say when the mask drop, put it on yourself before you put it on someone else, right? You're going to have to do the same thing with the kids in South Africa. By the way, I love South Africa. I was there last year. But you have to put it on. You have to put the mask on yourself and then put it on the kids. But same thing with quantum computing. You have to get astute. You have to get up to speed yourself, and then get knowledgeable on yourself. And then once you're up to snuff, then start teaching the kids. And that would be a great way of offering like a certification for quantum computing. That's another thing that you could offer for the kids. You can say, hey, you're certified in quantum, but you need to get up to snuff before you can teach. You're sort of like, train the trainers, right? You got to train people to train other people. You've got to do that. Get up to snuff and then train the students, and you should be good.
Oh, thank you very much. And the explanation of quantum entanglement and superposition, that's deep physics, but you were explaining it very clearly, simple, childlike. I actually enjoy all your elaboration. That's excellent. You have encouraged me. That is deep physics.
It is deep physics. It is. And like I was saying earlier for my talk, I went back and forth on whether I was going to include that. I said, people are going to just like, I'm going to look, there are going to be 20 people. And at the end of entanglement, there's going to be like 2, me and Tomei. So I was happy that everybody stayed on throughout that whole process. So thank you. Thank you for that.
We have one final question, Arthrees.
Hi. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is not my first time hearing about quantum computing. I've heard it, as the biggest threat, and so, but I didn't know how it worked, and so I really appreciate the explanation. This has been great, and because I I haven't really looked into it very much. I was wondering when you were talking about businesses not adopting this, this process, I was wondering if you were indicating that we should adopt it in our own industry, or if you were saying we should adopt it and get into selling it or teaching it and that sort of thing. And the reason why I ask is because I am in fashion and I'm getting into AI tech. And so I'm wondering if one of the reasons why I jumped on this call was to find out if I'm behind by adopting AI, or if I should skip AI and go into quantum physics for my business, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And to answer the first question is that I think it should probably be both. I think you should, get on what everybody's doing now and also create it for yourself. I think people get intimidated sometimes by the quantum computer era. It's really impractical to build your own, right? I mean, it takes way too much money and take way too much time, and you're gonna need a whole bunch of people in a facility. You need Google, Microsoft money, and those are $1 trillion companies. So the first step is you're gonna have to kind of get astute from what they've already built, and then from that standpoint, you can in turn use that knowledge in order to train and learn from other people from it. So I would probably recommend just getting up to snuff on what they built, and then learning and training. Very similar to what I told the young man earlier, is getting up to snuff, getting abreast of it, and then using that in order to move forward and applying it and building a business based on what you have learned. And then you can train other people, and then who knows, like I showed you, there was about 100 to 150 quantum computer out there. That number is going to expand. Eventually there's going to be a quantum computer that is going to be more like rentable, right? When I say rentable, I mean more rentable. The cost isn't absorbed, really high. So you can start there and then build from that, and then you can build a business based on what you learn from what IBM and Microsoft have already built, and kind of go forward from there. To answer your question, as far as with AI, no, you're stay on the AI track. Don't deviate from that. When they implement AI into quantum computing, the steps will probably be very close. It's just the process may change up somewhat. Some of the step, but if you just went to quantum, you may miss on some of the basic steps of AI. So learn AI right now that you have, and then as you move forward with quantum AI will make more sense. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Harold, you're always bringing, the last time you did one, you always bring that really deep information and knowledge that people always appreciate. Thank you everyone for showing up. If you're not a member of the chamber, you can join us here. If you are a member of the chamber and you want to join the MCAT committee, which put on this webinar and puts on others, you can email me here. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Harold, any last words?
No, just I want to thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me to, be able to share this knowledge. And I hope you got some information out of it. I hope you're able to advance your business. I hope you're able to increase your revenue. And please share what you've learned. Take what you have, talk to other people who do not know. This was not a talk to where you keep it to yourself. I know that when you mention superposition and entanglement, people are gonna be like, what? But I really want you to share this knowledge and just give it out to as many people as you possibly can. And reach out to me. I'll give you my information if you have any other questions or concern. But thank you again. It's been a pleasure presenting, and I hope you guys have a blessed day.
All right, I will see everyone later. Thank you for such a great session. Thank you, all of y'all, for joining us.
All right, bye.
You.